we're doing today is we are going to replace the motor mounts and the transmission mount. Kind of what started this is I'm doing the drive shaft, swapping it for the one out of the parts vehicle. You should have seen the video prior to this of me pulling the drive shaft out of the parts vehicle. If you haven't seen it, you can go back and watch it. But what we're doing on the reason I decided to go ahead and do this, it's got a vibration in it, and at a certain RPM, and it's definitely RPM specific, and so I kind of feel like it's motor mounts, and so I'm missing one bolt and a captive nut on the on the transmission mount, and I pulled one off the parts vehicle to put on here. And since I'm doing that, also it's kind of difficult to get in there and get those flex joint bolts, and it'd be easier if the transmission mount was removed. So I was like, well, if I'm going to remove the transmission mount, I might as well replace the transmission mount, because I already have the replacement. I bought it, and I have the replacement motor mounts as well. I was like, well, if I'm going to do the transmission mount, I might as well do the motor mounts too. So that's kind of where we are. And I've already got it jacked up, and I was like, I've got the thing jacked up as well on stands, so I don't have a lift, so if I'm gonna go to the trouble of jacking it up, put it on stands, might as well do the motor mounts. So we're gonna see if we can quickly do the motor mounts. Like I said, I've got it jacked up. When we're ready, we'll pull the little engine hoist over here and get on it right here, and we'll pick the front of the engine up. And yeah, so first thing we got to do is get up under it and remove the bolt that runs through the center of the motor mount. There's one of the motor mounts right there, and you can see that aluminum bracket right there. That's the bracket that bolts to the engine. Man, we're not focusing there. That bracket right there bolts to the engine. There's a bolt that runs through the center of the motor mount. That's the motor mount under that that shield. It's a heat shield. You can see one of the Allen head bolts that bolts the motor mount to the I'm going to say frame, but it's it's a unibody, but you know what I mean. And then there's one on the other side. But before we can do that, we've got to get the bolt out that bolts the motor mount to the engine, which we get to that from the bottom side. So we were going to go up underneath. We need an 8mm Allen, and what we want to do is you want to clean out the center. Get you a pick, clean out the center of those Allen head bolts. Make sure there's no grease. Get some brake cleaner, get whatever, spray up in there, get it fully cleaned out. Put your Allen head socket in there and tap it with a hammer to make sure it is fully seated in there, because you do not want to round those bolts off. So we're going to go through all that and get those bolts out. Once we get those bolts out on both sides, then we can pick the motor up, the engine up. Once we pick the engine up, then we can remove those heat shields. We can get to the Allen heads, take those off, unbolt them, pull the motor mounts out, put the new ones in, bolt them in, put the center, let the engine back down, put the center bolt back in, and we're good to go. So that's the plan. Let's get busy. Quickly, I'll set up a time lapse, but quickly I will show you where those bolts are. Alright, so coming up underneath, see right there in the center, right there, that's the Allen bolt. You can see the bottom side of the motor mounts. Those are captive nuts right there and right there. That's what the top side Allen bolts go through that bolt the motor mount. I guess you get to this engine support cross member. But Looks pretty gunk free up in there, but we're going to go ahead and take a pick, clean that out, and I'll spray some brake cleaner up in there, and then we'll get our socket, tap it in there, and see if we can break these loose. And on the other side we have the same thing. So right there, that one looks even cleaner, and we'll get these things out of here. I don't know yet if we'll have to undo the engine shock. We're gonna try first without. If we need to, we will, but they're right here, and there's a little shock absorber. Alright, so here we go. These motor mounts don't look that bad. Well, they got some cracking. They're not, I don't think they're completely collapsed, but they're definitely cracked. So we're replacing them before they've completely failed, but they definitely need replacing. So there's a hook or a lifting point right there on the front of the engine, and I just use my engine hoist, made in USA. Freewheeling. This is some nice old iron. A friend of my grandfather passed away about 2 years ago. A friend of my grandfather's gave this to me and my grandpa. We were pulling the engine out of, I don't even remember what we were pulling the engine out of, and he had a mechanic friend, and had his own shop, and we had borrowed this a few times, and you know, for motors and stuff, and we went to borrow it, and he said, "I'll let you borrow it on one condition: you don't ever bring it back." And so we got it. You know, he gave it to us, and he was a really nice guy. He died about 10 years ago, maybe. He had cancer, and really nice guy. But I grew up hanging out at his shop. Pretty much every weekend we went down there, and then during the summer we'd go down there. I'd go down there with my grandpa. We'd hang out. That's kind of where I learned how to do stuff like this. But super nice guy. I understand why he gave it to us, because it is not a folding one, and it is super nice to have, but it does take up space, so you got to find somewhere to store this thing. So I normally leave it in the fully collapsed position. I did extend the ram a little bit. Ideally you would extend the feet, but I'm trying to keep it clear so I can roll up underneath, and we're really not lifting that much weight. We're not lifting the whole weight of the motor, we're just lifting the front of the motor up. So we're going to get up underneath. We can get the top bolts from here, so I'm going to go ahead and get a long extension, get down there and break those loose, and then on the underside we'll probably have to actually use an Allen wrench, and get under there and to get those out, because there's just not enough room from up here to get to them on either side. So, and you just don't have much room. So Allen wrench is going to be the way to do it, and we'll get an Allen socket on these outer ones. Those are easy. Actually, let's see. I'm going to go up under and get the hard ones first. We'll get those accomplished, then we got the easy ones. got those out. Ended up breaking them loose with the Allen key, and then I was able to get this ratchet in there. It's a little stubby 3/8 1/4 inch, both sides. It's a little thick on the driver's side. Once it was loose, I was able to kind of angle it a little bit to clear the motor mount bracket. But got it out. So now we've just got the bolts, easy ones. So I'm going to get a long extension, and we're going to take our pick and go down in there. And we just clean these out. And I was up under there. I'm using those the jack stands that take a pin. Pin goes through it. And I went to roll up under the car, and that pin was sticking out of the jack stand, and I went to roll the creeper, and I just rolled my head right into that pin. Man, that hurt. I'm sure my scalp is bleeding. Oh, and I just rubbed I think I just rubbed that into my hair. I was trying to rub the sleeve, but I think my sleeve slipped and I just rubbed grease all in my hair. Well, gotta get a shower anyway, so I have to really scrub my hair to get that. The problem is that stuff, that grease like that, man, it's hard to get out. Alright, so let's see if I can get y'all set up where y'all can see. So let me get these. This mount definitely could have been causing some of our vibration because it was definitely sitting on the frame. One note I forgot to mention, you do need to undo the engine shock mounts just to give yourself, well, it'll make it easier where you can get the motor up just a little bit higher. Now I showed you all those two bolts underneath. Just loosen them off, and I'll let you lift the motor up just a little bit more so you got a little bit more room to work. Leave y'all positioned here for a second. I've got, I don't know if you can see if you could tell in the time lapse, but I lowered the engine back down. So now we just need to go underneath, and I think the bolts should be lined up. It looks like it's sitting right. Another thing I forgot to, one thing I forgot to mention is as you're jacking the engine up, beware of the fan and the fan shroud. This is an 85, so it's got a plastic fan, so as I was jacking it up, I was able to, of course, as it's jacking up, it's pulling the fan, top of the fan, away from the radiator, and so I was able to just pull the blades just a little bit to clear the fan shroud. But if you've got an 84 or older, it's going to have that aluminum fan, so you're probably going to have to undo the fan shroud. But it's down, so now we need to just throw the bolts back up underneath. These motor mounts, they settled down quite a lot. So you know, I don't have a lot of hope for them. You know, maybe they'll hold up. We don't know. We'll find out. Of course, you know, it is a lot of weight on them, but we'll see. We'll see how well they hold up. You know, like I said, not too bad of a job. At some point, I'm probably going to have to replace my oil line, my other oil line, unless I do the trick like I did for the other one. You know, and just the hose and the little clamps, which so far is still holding well. But I do have 2 good oil lines on the other engine, the other car. So we'll see how these hold up. If they fail, we may end up trying to get some better quality motor mounts. So I'm going to position y'all, and I'm going to go up underneath, and we're going to put the 2 big bolts back in. Motor mount's done. Really not that bad of a job. I'd say that's easier than doing them in like a small block Chevy. You know, they've got a good system here. It lines up well. You know, anyone who's done a small block Chevy knows that sometimes those bolts that go through the bracket on the motor and through the motor mount, sometimes those can be a bear to line up. These set the motor down on the mounts, and it kind of positions itself where they're supposed to go. And those bolts, they went in right in both sides, perfect. So kind of a nice system there. So it's in. We can move our lift out of the way, and that's it for this video. I'm going to go on to the transmission mount, and I'll show you all that in the next one. So I have a correction. This is an actual, this collapsed one is a Mercedes mount. This one, I bet, is original to the car. And this one is a replacement. This is a good mount, good quality mount. I'm gonna save this one, and if one of those new ones fails, I don't know that I'd be opposed to putting this one on there. I don't know. It's really not that bad of a mount. So we'll see. Might try to get this one. This is well made, and I think they make a lot of the, if you look, it's pretty much made the same as the Mercedes. I'd be surprised if I think Mail, or however you want to call it, M-E-Y-L-E, I think they make a lot of the OEM parts for Mercedes, although the casting's different between them. So it is a little different, so maybe not. Anyway, we're gonna keep this one, throw it in a box, and this one will go in that box and go in the trash. That one will go on the shelf. And if we have trouble with these mounts, we might throw that one on there. Alright, transmission mount. Now, here's the crazy thing. Well, I wish I could have. So these are MRC brand. And it says made in CN, The mount itself says Germany. Now I did not see, where does these are CN as well. I did not see on those other mounts where they said they were made. This one says made in China. So I don't know. They're all like DEA, MRC. Now this is a underneath that, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see how they hold up. They're not made as well. This looks nice, but those motor mounts look a little questionable. So save that one. Chunk that one. One other thing I'm not sure I mentioned. If you don't, not everybody has an engine hoist. If you don't, just take a piece of wood, 2x6 probably, and put up under the oil pan and use your floor jack. You do not want to put a jack directly on the oil pan. Use a piece of wood to balance out the load, spread it across the oil pan, and you can pick the engine up that way. So I use the hoist because I had it, but if you don't, you can do it with the floor jack and a board. Just make sure it's big enough to spread the load out well across the pan, because you don't want to dent it. So thanks for watching.